who's as adamant about his or her position as I am about mine, whom you think is sharp. Seriously, we know that. And another thing, we heard him say that... Hey, sports fans, this is episode number 43 of And Another Thing. Thank you for being Eldorados. Those of you who are not Eldorados, shame on you. Here's what you can do. Go to LarryElder.com and fill out the form, become an Eldorado. You're going to get a free copy of my award-winning feature-length documentary called Michael and Me. It's a Second Amendment, a pro-Second Amendment documentary where I track down the esteemed director, Michael Moore, you know, who did Bowling for Columbine, and I asked him 3 times how often Americans use guns to defend themselves, and 3 times he said, why should I tell you what he said? You won't get the DVD. Larry Elder, Michael and Me. Let's get started. As you know, what just now happened in Washington, D.C. at Navy Yard is that some guy with a beef goes in there and shoots up the place. He kills 12 people. He ends up getting killed himself and wounds several others. His name is Aaron Alexis. And within hours of this tragedy, people like Senator Dianne Feinstein here of California says we need to regulate or ban things like the AR-15. The reason she said the AR-15 is that's the weapon of choice. She says that's used by these rampage killers. It was used by the killer in Connecticut. It was used by the killer in Aurora. And it was assumed erroneously that it was used by this killer in Washington, D.C. this past week. It turns out there was no AR-15. Lord knows why, who reported there was an AR-15. There wasn't even one nearby, but the assumption was it was AR-15. More than that, the assumption, once again, is it's the firearm. If only we can remove these firearms or restrict these firearms, these kinds of tragedies won't happen. Nonsense. Let's talk about Aaron Alexis. This is a guy who, by the way, was in the Navy for several years, full-time Navy reservist, and he received an honorable discharge. However, he was cited at least 8 times for misconduct, including disorderly conduct, and the military reportedly wanted to get him out on what's called a general discharge, which is less than honorable. And the reason that's important is because had he gotten out with a general discharge, a less than honorable discharge, it is probable that he never would have been able to become a defense contractor, which is that's part of it. That is the most important part of it. Everything else is secondary. I'm sure movies have a role in it. We live in an R-rated society, and movies and language is far more racy than it was when I was growing up. There are lots of influences. We have computers, we have violent video games, we have lots of things. But it comes back down to the home. That's where your values are. And when you're not coming from a home. I hope you enjoyed this small excerpt. If you want to see the full video, got to be in Eldorado. Go to my website, LarryElder.com, log in, fill out the form. It'll cost you about $4.75 a month, or about the price of a mocha frappuccino latte at your favorite coffee house. As you can tell, I don't like coffee. I'm a tea drinker. See you next time.